It looks like we're just about ready to go, so perhaps I'll officially say hello to everyone that's joining us in person or online here at Concordia University's Fourth Space. Thanks so much for joining us for this event entitled Roma Perspectives and Open Public Discussion on Films and Documentaries about Roma. We're certainly looking forward to this conversation here today, and thanks for sticking around with us. This is, of course, all happening within the scope of the Romani-Translation Summer Institute here at Concordia University, and you're joining us now from Fourth Space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands here in Jojage, Montreal. The space that you just walked into is a public space. Everything that happens here is free and open to all, with the intent of connecting people to what's going on at Concordia in terms of research and various initiatives. And so we produce daily activities such as this one in order to make what happens within a university accessible to a wider public and audience. So thank you again for joining us in person and online. And it's been a great pleasure to collaborate with Debbie Fullerin, who is kind of spearheading this project here at Concordia, and her team of excellent, wonderful researchers and students that we've been working with all week so far. Looking forward to next week as well. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to pass the floor to our invited guests here today. Welcome. Over to you.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us for this session. My colleague, Dr. Hristo Kyuchikov, is helping me co-host and facilitate the session in the next less than 90 minutes, which we have at our disposal. So the decision was to show you 6 clips from 5 different documentaries, 4 documentaries and 1 drama, or docudrama, which will feature Romani language as well as English, right? But all of these films have been made using Romani language translation. So we produced the films using Romani language, which is providing a great access to Romani speakers, right? Romani speakers are not used to being interviewed in Romani language, right? When there is a camera that represents the institutional world, and where there is the institutional world, Romani speakers normally don't use Romani language, right? They're not used to that. However, using Romani language and Romani customary laws, right, the two together will open up Romani speakers, and they will share about some of their deepest experiences and emotions on camera, right? And I'm hoping that you will also find these clips deep enough to contemplate on, as well as to have an exciting discussion. So the format would be over the next roughly 82 minutes now, that I'm going to introduce each of these clips, and then we'll play the clip, and then we're going to have a discussion about it. Once the discussion is concluded, then we move on to the next clip, right? So if everyone is fine with that, let's just kick it off then. So the very first film we decided to choose and to share with you guys is The Deathless Woman, right? This is the very first Romani language Holocaust film that has ever been made. It's been directed by a lady, a professor called Rose Mortimer, right? She teaches at several reputable universities, and she's an expert in filming, directing about trauma, the experience of trauma. And she got very much interested in the trauma experience of Romani speakers in the Holocaust. So she was researching the film for many years, and it was in 2012 that she was led to a place in Tarnów in Poland, right, where there is a museum, and we have, oh my God, what's the museum director's name in Tarnów, who is a very famous person in the Roma movement himself. Adam Bartosz, thank you very much, Hristo. Adam Bartosz. So Rose Mortimer, the director, was led to Adam Bartosz in Tarnów, Poland, in southern Poland, and to a story there, right, that some of the locals remembered and shared. Now, Adam Bartosz, the museum director, was also aware of the story and shared about it to Rose. So Rose went and interviewed the people, right, and discovered an amazing story, right, which, according to eyewitnesses, actually happened, right? Now, if you watch the whole film, you can watch the testimony of the eyewitnesses that actually saw what happened to this woman, right, who was murdered, right, by local police. They went to Roma, to a village which was inhabited by Roma, and they decided to kill everyone, right? This was during World War II, when the concentration camps were going on, when the Nazi era was in power, and then they killed everyone. But this woman, this single woman, was not dying, even though they loaded lots of bullets in her, right? And then after they obviously killed her, all the dead bodies got exhumated a couple of years after that. And according to the eyewitnesses, all the dead bodies were rotten. However, this one single body of this woman wasn't, right? She looked like as if she was sleeping when she was found, according to eyewitnesses. And then she was taken to the cemetery where they buried her properly, as well as all the other remains. And then when Rose was there, the spirit communicated to her, right? Now, Rose also comes from a family where they have the skills to communicate with spirits, similarly to many in the Romani community as well. And then she decided to document everything and to make this film, right? There was a Hollywood production company that was very much interested in the story and wanted to buy it from her, but she didn't want it to make it into a sensational movie, so she decided to make it herself. Now, we're going to play the trailer where the main character is a ghost, right? It's the spirit of this woman who passed away, and the ghost couldn't find peace until she managed to tell the story, right? Now, why don't we watch the clip, and then I'll tell you more and we get into discussion mode. There we go.
Sarnashale drama. Hacharaf ke varisu chorimoavel. I holi shulolo andemande taidelma zorte mukaf muroshiro. Sako e golovo paradasma. Ale sodivar peilemtar saketivar vastilemo pre taipondem makarinklente. Mekertilem iromni kon nashtig merelas.
I felt possessed by this woman who had refused to die, who had drawn me to her grave. She was full of rage.
Cijanav sushai jungadasma numa kadati kavotu. Ale otuf so pabarele patra bevesheski puvna andamuri holi. Kavrengiak sikodo.
I understood all the events that had led me to this place, to this small village in Poland, were not coincidences at all, and that she was everywhere.
Abache hachara sarnashale drama.
If you can stop it here, please, before we play the next clip. So the main character, the ghost, was coming from a caste that Rose was not familiar with. And she wanted to figure out which exact Romani-speaking group, or as I call the Romani groups to make it easier to understand the differences between the Romani groups, caste. What caste, Romani caste, she was coming from. Now, my initial gut feeling was based on the history in our families. My wife Maria, who sat in the room as well here with us today, and we both had in our families numerous members actually deported to concentration camps, murdered, and some of them survived as well. And we know from the stories that because we come from one of the most traditional castes, right? We dress like gypsies are pictured in stereotypical images, right? So women would normally wear long skirts, headscarf, and also the way we walk on the streets and the way we move on the streets, the way we behave is very visible, right? So when people say that's a gypsy, they normally refer to us. Even other Romani-speaking groups will say, oh, we are not gypsies, but those guys over there, those traditional guys, they are the gypsies, right? So many of our people were the first to be taken by the Nazi soldiers, to be gathered and deported to the concentration camp. So we had the gut feeling that this woman could have come from our caste as well. And after some research, which didn't take too long actually, we managed to figure out that we were right. Yeah, so she was coming from the Lovari Kelderash community herself, and the director decided that we should use her original language that she was using when she was alive, right? And in our community, normally your first language is Romani. So then she said, okay, then so let's have her voice in Romani and in her dialect too. So then it took quite some time to find a translation which was working with native speakers as well. So Hadina yesterday was referring to the importance of also having your translation checked and making sure that people will also understand your translation. And since this is about a film, we wanted to be absolutely sure that it will be understood. So we showed it to numerous native speakers, and they were absolutely fine with that. So once we got through that process, then we knew that we are ready to roll out the film, because everything else was ready by the time the Romani-Translation was delivered. Now, this lady, as you've seen in the trailer, is giving a very new experience really to viewers, because on one hand they can listen to Romani language, on the other hand it is spoken authentically as well. So the actress called Iveta Kokyova, originally from Prague, she's a Romani language teacher herself, and she's also a Romani translator. And she happens to speak this dialect from her childhood as well, right? But she still needed a bit of training to make it absolutely authentic. Now we managed to do that too. And then once the film was out, it went around the cinemas in the UK. It also won several awards in the UK as well as overseas. But then we realized that the Romani community has not seen the film, right? So we were thinking, let's take this to the Romani community. Rose was very enthusiastic about the idea. And I said at the very beginning, well, look, in our culture, we don't speak about death, right? And ghosts. We find them very scary. Not because we are coward people, but because we believe that spirits are alive, they don't die, and they stick around with us. And we must respect them, right? We have to respect their peace, right? Or if they have a problem that they couldn't untangle for any reason, we need to give them the space, right? So we don't mess around with the spirits. Therefore, this theme was extremely challenging to show to the Romani community. So we won funding from Arts Council England, and we took it to a national tour in the UK, where most of the Romani speakers are based. So we went from Glasgow through Manchester, Sheffield, Chester, London, all over England, really, in the biggest cities we went with the film. And we had really mixed reactions in the Romani-speaking community. There were towns where not a single member would come. And we ran a very thorough promotion in all of the Romani communities. So we thought that Romani speakers will never watch it, but after the tour, we realized that the number of views were going up, right? From the exact areas where we were having our tour stops, tour destinations. And we were very happy to see that more and more Romani speakers were watching it. And whoever watched it got very deeply engaged, right? And more stories were pouring out, right? Now, here I would like to stop and instead of giving you more information about the film, I would also like to tell you about another thing that this film inspired, right? As I explained to you, we had several members in our families that were deported and murdered, but we also had a few survivors. Very luckily, in Maria's family, she had 3 survivors, right? She had her grandmother, the grandmother's sister, and their mother who survived. Now, one part of the story I'm not going to share because Maria is going to cover that story in her workshop on day 10, but that you're all very cordially invited to attend in the afternoon, where she will run a food workshop and you will get an opportunity to taste traditional Gypsy food. But skipping that bit of the story, getting to the end of it, it inspired us to write a drama, right, with Maria, with the real stories that happened in our families. And this drama is about the 16th of May, which is very well known today as the Roma Resistance Day, right? Now, the Roma Resistance Day is about the resistance of the Romani inmates at Auschwitz-Birkenau that was organized on 16th of May, 1944. It wasn't a big resistance, as others would have done it in other groups at the concentration camps. It was a few people out of the 6,600 inmates that decided to risk their lives so everybody else can survive. And on that day, because they resisted the Nazi attempt to gas everyone, they avoided death for everyone, right? Now, the drama we wrote is titled 600 Roma and tells the story of the survivors. One of the survivors also received an injection from Mengele, right? These are all real, true stories that actually happened and have never been told because we've been keeping these stories to ourselves. They are very painful stories, very hard even to remember, let alone discussing about it. But after several decades now, we thought, now that Maria's grandmother passed away last year, we thought that maybe this is the time to bring out those stories inspired by the deathless movement which we saw. We performed the drama, right? And it had an amazing success. We first performed it in Bradford. And since then, we did another couple of performances of it. And we got invited to some places. However, another film director approached us who has titles on some of the biggest platforms out there globally. A famous director himself and playwright. He fell in love with the 600 Roma, and he thought that this is a great story. So right now we are working on a drama, a film drama, and hopefully, if all goes well, by end of next year, we will manage to complete the project. Now, I'm just wondering if in the audience, anybody is familiar with any Roma Holocaust film before this film. Yeah, please, if you can tell me which films you've seen before. Sorry, I think you will need a microphone so everybody else can hear you as well as the online viewers. If you can please give us a few seconds. Thank you very much. And then the gentleman after that, please, in the white shirt.
I think the one that comes to mind initially is Schindler's List, but I've had the opportunity to read a number of other books that describe the concentration camps and so on from different perspectives.
Yeah, but the Schindler's List is not about the Roma
I don't
Which
know
one?
if you... Martunnebel, that's the German name
Oh,
for
okay.
it. And it's all about the construction of the camps and how it was organized, how it was processed. That's a triggering one to watch. And also Shoah, that is a very long documentary. I think it's a 9-hour long documentary because I've studied concentration camps literature when I was younger. So I've come to read different perspectives from Francophone authors, actually.
So, are there any episodes where they show the building concentration camps for Roma in the movies which you...
It's very sporadic, I have to say. Once you are reading some of this literature, you might encounter mentions of it, but their voices, it's another story. It's not, I wouldn't say I was able to read or to watch anything that was directly linked to their own story, their own recalling of it. It was more about people engaged in literature. It took a long time, even if you read Primo Levi, the Italian author, he says it himself, is that it took at least 10 years to be able to write something that would be read regarding the Second World War and the Holocaust. And it took 40 years for people to hear it. And so that's my experience with it, but I don't recall reading or seeing anything that was directly the Romani's voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are some
Yeah.
more.
Chantal, we're not forgetting about you here. You also had your hand up. Yes.
Well, I saw a film which has been made by a filmmaker in Toronto. He was a student. Unfortunately, I do not remember the title, but I can search for you later on. And also, I saw many clips, and it was very traumatizing, about the genocide perpetrated against the Roma. I saw that at the Museum of Washington. I went into the archives, and that's so awful. But I saw clips, and that's hard, I think, for anyone, who has either a relative who have been involved into it. And also, I read a very interesting book in French. I find it's the best book that this author has written in all his life. It's a book of Matteo Maximov in French, Rousse en roulotte. And it's a very moving, it's not just about the concentration camp, but he really described very well all the resistance that they use. And they also have, I record a kind of, not life story, but a little story from one member of a family who lived in Toronto for a while.
Thank you.
We can exchange,
There are some other...
Yes. Hannah and Orhan in the back had their hands up.
And the guy over there.
And you over there, sir,
Uncounted. And people uncounted Aaron Yeager's film.
Thanks.
Which one?
People Uncounted.
Oh.
Thank you. I was wondering if I could ask you a question about this topic while we're going through that. Is that okay, or should I save my questions for the end?
No, please do.
So I just want to preface my question with saying this is a sensitive thing I'm about to bring up. So my apologies if I don't speak with exactly the right words. Know that I'm trying to express myself in the best way possible. But when we talk about sort of Holocaust movies and Holocaust remembrance, it always has put me, in my experience, in a weird position. As through my dad, I'm Romani, but my mom is Jewish and raised me to be Jewish. So I came to learn the hard way that there is kind of like bad blood between, not of all, but some Jewish and Romani communities, feeling the other doesn't respect what happened in the Holocaust. Whereas, there are some Jewish scholars and community members I've talked to who feel like the Roma communities and scholars they've worked with don't appreciate the pain that the Jews went through And I also have met Roma scholars who feel like sort of Jewish historians keep them down and don't allow them to get the full remembrance they would like. When we talk about Schindler's List, while it may not be a movie for Roma or Romani, it's a very important movie for Jews. At least, Steven Spielberg is one of our finest. But where this is going is last summer, I attended a workshop for Romani studies students, and the scholar who was leading the discussion was like, let's talk about other minorities in Europe. And she was like, so we're going to talk, so think about, and this is mostly Roma students, and I was the only Jewish student there. And she goes, think about, what other minorities you interact with. And people started talking about Jews. And what happened was every student would stare at me when they had something to say about Jews. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is making me uncomfortable. And, they were generalizing, and I was really surprised because, I started to realize that in this space, where it was, we were told this is a safe space, you can be Roma, you can be Romani as much as you want, but it became clear to me this is not a safe space to be Jewish. And when I raised my hand and said, I know where this is a different thing, but I'm Jewish, and I just want to sort of say, lay some groundwork for, how we can talk about, Judaism, Jewish communities in a way that, isn't hurtful. And, I was shut down immediately and, accused of all sorts of things. And I was like, okay. And then I just backed away from Romani studies for a year because I was super affected by that. So I'm just curious about balancing these two narratives and sort of two tragedies. And I hate to see minorities fighting against each other. So my question has to do with that.
Can we carry on and then we'll reflect onto that with Christo, please? Orhan and the gentleman in the back as well.
My name is Arokia. I come from New Delhi. I'm doing my PhD studies here. So my sharing, if it is colored by Indian experiences, pardon me. The movies I recall is Life is Beautiful, where I could get an experience of what happens. Then The Sound of Music, there is a bit of it. Then if I can recall documentary, The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, I do not know whether exactly, but it's more of like Jewish girl's perspective. And also I watched documentaries on John Paul II. In the Catholic Church, he's called Pope and Saint, but in his life, there is a section where they focus on the experience of the people from Poland taken to concentration camp. So in the movie, at the end of the trailer, there is a sentence, the deathless woman is everywhere. So does the director or the people who research would also like to communicate that this experience of a deathless woman it transcends the culture of Roma, and it can vibrate with experiences irrespective of the nationalities, cultures, and especially someone mentioned the minorities. So initially we focus on women, but when you go to closer research studies, in each culture, so-called minorities, the women are further subjugated, especially I'm speaking from an Indian's perspective. So I just would like to end here. Thank you.
Orhan as well, please.
I raise my hand just for this public that is here, and it's very good to know much more about. I was co-producing a film called Broken Silence. This Broken Silence film is a documentary film where I made a journey how and what's happened with Romani people. This film shows actually, first of all, how we Roma, we are not aware of what's happened with us, but also the mechanism of the Nazi, how they were killing Romani people. There are a number of the films that we should consider, and one of is a film of Cheya Stoica, her story, what's happened during Second World War. And as well, there are films, for example, You Have Killed My Innocent Family, then The Green, Green Grass Beneath and so on. I will be very modest to not mention whole range of the films done by Romani people as well, directors, but also some film directors from Central Eastern Europe have been showing the story of Roma in the Second World War. Thanks.
Right. Yeah. Am I audible? Sorry. Yeah, mic is still on. Great. Thank you very much for that. About Hannah's experience, yes, and I experienced that too myself. Unfortunately, there is a lack of mutual respect among the Jews and the Roma, indeed. However, one major difference, which I figured between the two, is that there isn't an awareness in the Roma community about the Holocaust, right? The Jewish community is pretty much aware of what happened, and they have lots of details. The Roma community doesn't, right? And many don't even believe that it was true in the Roma community. So there's lots of darkness, unfortunately, in the Roma community. This is why it is very important to produce more and more content in the native language of the Romani speakers, which appeals to them and gives them the understanding which is missing. Because I'm personally thinking, once Roma people understand about the dark history we all share together, it will be amazing. This is exactly what we need. Roma people have never had solidarity towards one another. It never existed. And I always said over the last decade, since I've been an activist myself, that we have to create a day, because April 8th, the International Roma Day, is more about sadness, right, and grieving. And I said, well, we've got 2nd of August for the Roma Holocaust Day. So why have another grieving day? Because April 8th is also about the human rights atrocities and human rights violations that Romani speakers go through, and it isn't only about that. Then I came across this story in 2012 in Berlin. That was my first time at the Holocaust Memorial, and just a few days before that in Brussels there was a conference where I made this speech to a large audience, saying that we have to create that day of solidarity, right? Well, like the Roma Heroes Day. So we understand that there is no solidarity right now among the Romani groups, and it's very important to create that, right? And let's celebrate the Roma heroes that can manage to connect Romani people and different Romani groups. And then I found a story engraved on a tombstone, 16th of May. And the only reason why I stopped there, because there have been lots of other people who walked past that tombstone, right? And lots of other people have read about it, right? But nobody ever spotted it. And the only reason why I spotted it was because of May 16, because I got a cousin, his name is Ronaldo. He's the only Roma guy I know who always challenges any anti-Gypsyism that occurs anywhere. And he will be very vocal about it. So if we go to Tesco's, for example, which is a huge global supermarket, do you guys have Tesco's here in Canada? Lucky. Yeah, so over there in Europe, they're very, very big, right? And if we go to Tesco's and we see racist eyes looking at us, he will call it out. He will get the manager to come around, and he'll make sure that all the shoppers at Tesco's, even if they are in the thousands, will know what happened to us, right? And then I remembered Ronaldo, and I read the story, and I got the goosebumps straight away, and I was thinking, oh my God, there actually was one single day in recorded history where Roma, regardless of their caste, decided to unite. Now we know from the stories of the survivors, from the accounts of the survivors, that this wasn't a big resistance, right? So even in the face of death, Roma people wouldn't unite, yeah? Because as I've always said, I'm thinking, if we come from India, and we do, then we are like Indians. And what are Indians like? Caste systems that don't mix with one another. And we have never mixed with one another either. That's what I've always said. That's why we've got the dialects. That's why we've got the different professionals across the different castes. That's why some are more traditional, some less traditional, right? And that's why we are taught not to mix with each other and stay within our own caste, right? And I can see Arokia nodding in the back very heavily, right? But then we made this day, and the guys who were with me discovering it, Adriatic, Hassan Tari, Jonathan Mack, and Vicente Rodriguez, I think he's called, I shared the story with them, yeah, the whole excitement, and they said, oh yeah, this could indeed be the day. But then they named it the Roma Resistance Day, which again doesn't sit with the Roma because Roma never resist. However, I'm thinking, can I give it to you, Christo, now, if you can reflect, please?
Yeah, sure. I was waiting for...
Thank you very much for your patience.
To finish your sentence. Well, first of all, we have to be very careful when we make generalizations. We cannot say that between Roma and Jewish there is a conflict and the Roma hate Jewish hate Roma, just because there was a training, summer school, whatever, and there happened something. This is based on one person's personal experiences, right? And from this, what happened there, we cannot say that all the Roma around the world hate all the Jewish around the world, and all the Jewish around the world hate all Roma around the world. No, this is nonsense. We should remember all these stories. Now I'm going in another direction, but I have to say that. All those stories where Roma were helping Jewish people and Jewish people were helping Roma people in the concentration camps. Recently I published a book, and the book is about the Roma women during the Second World War who were doing exactly this. They were helping Jewish children to take Jewish children from trains which were going to Auschwitz, from those trains who were passing through special train stations, and there were breaks there, and the train station, at the train station, the train will stop, and then the Roma woman, and I can name the names, I can give the names of the women. And I was doing this research for approximately 2 years, last 2 years. One of them was Noncha, Alfreda Markowska from Poland, who saved approximately 50 Jewish and Roma children, and she died 2 years ago. And when I heard her story, then I decided that it's impossible to be just one Roma woman doing that. And then I started to search, and I found also other women from Poland, Latvia, from Czech Republic, from Kosovo, from, so we should be careful with the generalizations. And there was another boy whose name was Bubili, and who was taken to concentration camp when he was 15 years old, and he spent 6 years moving from concentration camp to concentration camp. And just few months before the end of the war, in the last concentration camp, there were 16 Jewish children brought to that concentration camp, and he was a worker in the kitchen, and he saw that the Nazis are planning next day to kill those 16 children. Then together with one of the couples, he explains to the couple what he heard, and then they decide to change the list with the names and with the numbers of the children, with sick, anyway, dying people, and they saved these 16 healthy Jewish children. And then this particular Roma boy succeeded to save them and to hide them in the concentration camp. And those are stories which I didn't make them up. I'm not so intelligent to make those kind of stories up, right? So I found them in different publications, in different testimonies, in different documentaries, books, and stuff like that. So there was solidarity between Jewish and Roma people. And there is solidarity between Jewish and Roma people. And the last example, which I will give, I went to Tel Aviv on the end of January because a Roma woman whose name was Hairia Imeri Mihalic from Kosovo. During the Second World War, she was working as a cleaning lady in a Jewish family. The mother of this, in this Jewish family, there was a young woman who was married with a Macedonian guy. And they had a girl whose name was Esther. And when the baby was 6 months old, the mother and the father decided to become partisans. And they left the child with the grandparents. So this Roma woman was working in their house, taking care of the house and taking care of the baby. And one day the Nazis came and took the old woman, the old Jewish man and woman to the concentration camp with the baby. And then this Roma woman had to go to her village. She was living not so far from that town. And then once she decided to visit the village with her children. She had 5 children. And then they went to the concentration camp, and going there, meeting this Jewish woman and the baby, she decided to steal the baby because the grandmother gave the baby to Hairia, the Roma woman, and she left the concentration camp with 6 children. She raised the child until the age of 5, and the child was learning Romani language. The child, but the grandmother asked the Roma woman, please tell her that she is Jewish. And when the child was around 4 or 5, the mother Hairia started to explain to her who is she and how is she. And then finally she found her biological mother, and they left by the age of 8 together with her mother, a biological mother, to Israel. And nowadays the woman is in Israel, in Tel Aviv, 83 years old. And I went to see her and to meet her because I read the story of Hairia. Wow. And I met Stella. When Stella was speaking and telling the story about Hairia, she was referring to her, my mother. She didn't say Hairia. She didn't say the gypsy woman. She didn't say the Roma woman. She was saying my mother. And she said, my mother was teaching me Romani, but I forgot that language. We were speaking in Macedonian because she learned Macedonian from her biological mother. So why I'm telling all these stories? Because, again, I should say, we should not generalize. There is always humanity, empathy, sympathy between the people, Roma and Jewish, and of course, there is all kind of people around us, Jewish, Roma, non-Roma, whatever, whoever. Good people, bad people, but yeah, the sympathy and the empathy and the solidarity is there very often. And thanks God to those archives, publications, testimonies, we can see that. We can find that information, what happened during the Second World War. And thanks God, there are also documentary films, including the film which Orhan Galush made about this, what happened to Roma during the Second World War. And you were saying something which is very important, that our people don't speak about this, what happened during the Second World War, and especially in the concentration camp. We should acknowledge that our people didn't speak until 1980s about this, what happened in the concentration camps, because there was a shame. A woman who survived the concentration camp, she was blamed to some extent that she survived the concentration camp, having in mind what happened in the concentration camps with women. So usually the Roma women were in Auschwitz in the so-called gypsy family camp, where they had to take care of the children, of the husband, and they had to keep the clean name, the name of her husband. And of course, there was all kind of crazy stuff going on in the concentration camps, together with the medical experiments and etc. But the Roma women were raped. The Roma women were shown naked to their community members, to their children. And the biggest shame for a Roma woman was that her hair was cut in front of her children. This is the biggest shame. Why? Culturally speaking, we, the Roma, know which woman's hair are cut publicly in front of their children, in front of the community, when the Roma woman did something wrong, when the Roma woman had another, being married, had another relationship with another man. And then a woman who survived the concentration camp, and all those things happened to her, and her children witnessed this, she cannot speak about this. She will never speak about this. I will give the example with Če Stojka. Če Stojka came to concentration camp when she was 9 years old, a child. And she got out from the concentration camp when she was 14 years old. Young woman, almost, in that time, in the Roma communities. Until the age of 56, Če Stojka never told what happened to her. Never. She was not painting, she was not writing books, she was not speaking publicly, because she was the shame of the community, according to the Roma culture. And there is also a certain age when a Roma woman can speak and get respect. When you are 20 years old, 30 years old, and you speak in front of the elderly Roma, you will not be respected if you tell what happened to you, right? But if you are 56 years old, 60 years old, and you tell what happened to you in the concentration camp, if you write a book about this, if you make paintings, this is what she was doing, then you are taken differently. You are respected from both Roma and non-Roma. So all those small cultural things are not known, unfortunately, by most of the Roma and non-Roma Jewish. And we have to speak about this. We have to make it known, because otherwise we will have this misunderstanding, wrong feeling that, yeah, our people don't speak because they don't have memory. This is what I hear very often. Our people don't speak because they are irresponsible to the history or whatever. This is also what I hear. But we have to know, and we have to take into account the cultural perspective in all these historical moments from the history of Roma, and how these things happened and what happened actually. Because yeah, there is a thing which is called respect in the Roma community, and that respect should be gained from both sides, from Roma, from non-Roma. And if you went through all these things which were happening in the concentration camps, then it's quite difficult to gain the respect. It doesn't matter, are you male or female, because showing naked someone to all community, it's not acceptable. Yeah, maybe I should stop here.
Thank you, Christo.
Sorry.
Just a final thought on that. Many of the accounts very clearly state that women also had to suffer further atrocities from the liberators, right? Which you guys are probably aware of too. And if you're interested in learning more about it, then I will very highly recommend the film that will come out, the 600 Roma, on the theme. Now, we've got another 5 clips to play, and I'm thinking I would just make an introduction in front of each. We would play them after that, each of them, and then when we are done watching all of them, that's when we will carry on the conversation. Otherwise, we won't get to the 3rd clip, I'm guessing now. And I also understand that there would be a deep conversation following each of these clips. In the next video clip that we're going to play, we can see another evidence again about the importance and benefits of using Romani language in interviews and in filming with people. If you think about it, most of us can best express our thoughts and emotions in our mother tongues, right? But also, if you think about how many films have been made in Romani language so far, very, very, very few. To be honest, I've not come across too many in my life, especially on big platforms. I've never seen a Romani language film on any of the big platforms yet. Now, this one is titled The Street Schooling. We filmed it, the first part, when COVID started in England. There is a very large number of East European Romani speakers present in the United Kingdom. And we are going to see a family, Margita's family, from Trebišov, originally in Slovakia at the Hungarian border, and her granddaughter Martina, right? Through Romani language and through Romani language activities in schools and through role models who speak Romani, we are trying to bring dreams closer to their own reality. Like, can I dare to dream that I will become a teacher, that I will have a university degree, whereas we've been eating out of the bin so far, and nobody ever in my family, several generations before me, never ever attended school, and they have always been illiterate. Can I, as a young girl, achieve that dream, right? And we are trying to make activities, and through the filming as well, we're trying to open them up and to show them, yes, it is possible for you. Do dare to dream and fight for your dream. We made this film with Phil Turner, who's a reputable director in the UK. Let's watch it now, please.
So now is the time to take action, because there is no alternative. And from Thursday until the start of December, you may only leave home for specific reasons. It will not be possible to reopen schools immediately after the February half-term. And I know how frustrating that will be.
So we're back in Bradford today. It's the 24th of October, Saturday. COVID-19 infections are on the rise again. We need to make sure that Roma children from Eastern Europe are also on top of their homework. We want to make it sweet for the kids. It's important that they feel that the school is there, that Koskasen is there for them, and they can reach out to us anytime. Oh, that's Tayo nivelo 2, hintut, kudlan, cha chesta, klan. Aj kana sukame stekeresa, so hintut oda.
The Katerina is 100 Portugal.
Servicines tu. So you go to. How is it there? Do you like going there?
It's so mean there.
Mean?
Yeah, and the teacher is not good.
Teresia, kamavas te pereslenge pa tute ženeske.
Me, che era pucitar citelka pre škola, som hej advokata, a mne sam kaj se Roma umbrika Roma, bashkëdera me mushkinasi tradição medijan ande shkola, desejon vede premaniporia, premanicultura, bashkëdera nova sejana pesini chauri sojo tamel de keret kanavila Paris.
Sobi kamljala sa sikloha, jahan rebari škola, a kamera te krem buči, savi kam izbuči.
Učitelka, hej, Terezija hin učitelka, že ne sam upre anglisko. Hej, tu še je vec učitelka.
Sa sikloha, evo to sa, sa kamera, čaj to sa, sa kamera. Sana saraminka keire sama znana min darnič. Ali tu ade tu tarade šajilhu, so.
Hin tu kelače sam re škola.
Naa. Na igin pezlau de bavine nu čove bud. A okere man sana ande škola na nebo ande aver škola.
Ne pringeram cu Roma kaj naš sigel Andrei Savi škola yon kamen bashkode kaj na ne thana. Kada na ne problema saravela thana yon kerela te transfer.
Skušinate keraptuke, okej? Amet sam korkoron. Očabe pamande pire. Amet sam korkoron. Yes, thank you very much. So the next clip that we're going to look at is from Keeping Up with the Khans. This one was on Channel 4 with 4 episodes. We filmed it for 2 years in a row. I literally spent my weekends there as well. Very, very hard work it was. This was a follow-up to, Benefit Street, I remembered. Benefit Street is the most popular documentary ever that has been made in the UK with the highest number of viewership. And because of its huge success, there were some Roma families there too. And there was a huge curiosity in the British audience to learn more about the Romani speakers living in the UK and their stories. So this one, Keeping Up with the Khans, was meant to be the continuation of that. And we filmed it in Pagel, Sheffield, right, which is very highly inhabited by East European Roma, mostly Slovakian Roma. And I chose a clip which actually didn't make it to the actual broadcast because Dad didn't consent to it. We are going to see a clip about Sebastian and his family, and we're going to see a story where his child's arm burned. So this was a regular filming day. We finished, it was around about 6 or 7 p.m. and we were wrapping up and about to leave the house. And then Sebastian, this young dad, comes to me and tells me in Romani language, "Jews, can you come upstairs? I just want to show you something very quickly." And I'm like, "Man, we finished the day. Can we do that tomorrow? I'm so tired. Can we do that tomorrow?" And he says, "No, man, it's not a big deal. It will take you 1 minute and that's it. Just come upstairs with me." But according to the protocol, as a member of the film crew, I cannot go on my own. But since we called it a day already, the director told me, "Jews, why don't you just go on your own then, right?" And then I went upstairs, and then he shows me his baby with a burnt arm, right? And he's looking at me, and I'm like, "What do you want, man? Do you want to go to the doctors and you have no money for a taxi? Is that why you wanted to speak to me? No problem, I'll call you a cab, I'll call you an Uber." And he says, No, I need a plane ticket." I'm like, "What do you mean you need a plane ticket, man? You've gone crazy? Take the child to the A&E, that's what emergency is called in the UK, or to the GP doctor." "No, Juice, you don't understand. They're gonna take my child. I'm not gonna take my son there." So let's have a look at the clip.
Ужаваския, акерадо, сториам ските шудро, жанеш под акерадо, ната дежа ще породо шиваво, средния. Но иски торно по шудро, е поверзателя, чиджа по песка, фолля, чиджа по ските чангори.
Sebastian's baby has had an accident. Scared that a doctor might report him, he's opted to treat the burn himself.
Ije karum yata libe vechavoren, geva kosham darandroker, socialka, vechavoren eva. Aj do kanana ne vechavoren hiç.
Appoggiano sposama se per le chasa las que musori ehas. Hay un pesque mishno su da hoyo mehe yo pesque musip hoyo. La das legendare pramede vichino. Na kore saltaras ka vichino.
Why don't we get a private doctor who will understand the worries that they have as a community?
Concerned for the child's welfare, crew offer the services of their own medic.
You all right? Okay.
Slovakian?
Yeah. You speak Slovak?
No.
But some are wary of letting a gadji, the Romani word for an outsider, into their home.
I've come to have a look at the burn and the baby's like, no authorities. I'll leave you this. Only use that for food.
Stop filming, otherwise I will put you outside.
Should have gone to hospital. I can understand them worrying, but really they should have got it looked at.
Yeah, he's getting very big pressure from everyone inside, yeah?
No, diceva che non sapeva zacila, rozumiesz? I każdego kiwacie za wakana meko szedł. Sokie na wakana.
Sorry.
So keeping up with the cons, you can watch some of the episodes on YouTube that are available there, the entire episodes to watch. The next clip is from The Gypsy Matchmaker, right, which was again another really popular documentary on Channel 4. And on the night of the broadcast, this was also a #1 hashtag, this documentary, which we made about rather controversial issues that newspapers would publish about whenever they come across a similar story where it's about early marriages or some marriage problem with the gypsies, right? I'm sure you know many of those stories and you've come across those stories in the media. So the director here, Ben Steele, thought, Juice, I want to cover these controversial stories and I want you to help me so I can help people with prejudices understand what's behind these controversial issues. Help them explain what's going on here so they can see clearly. Let's not sweep things under the carpet. And I'm the kind of guy with the same approach. So we found each other and we made this film. It actually earned a Royal Television Society Academy Award nomination in a year after the broadcast. Now, in this clip, we are going to see a man called Huko, who is originally from Transylvania and present-day Romania, who welcomed a young girl and her boyfriend to stay at his place in Rotherham, in one town in Yorkshire. And then social services, this girl got pregnant. She was 14 years old, right? And she got pregnant. And then the health visitor and the GP figured out about it. They reported it to social services, and then social services was looking for this 14-year-old girl. They were hiding this girl, and then at some point, Huko got evicted and moved from Rotherham to Birmingham. And let's just watch the clip instead of me telling you what's happening.
In South Yorkshire, Huko and his family are on the road. They've been evicted from their home in Rotherham after not paying rent for 8 months. Just before they moved out, social services stepped in and the 14-year-old pregnant girl who lived with the family was taken into care.
Fiindcă la trebuie tinglas tu că n-ai ce familie, ce părinți cade. Apende migla mande, n-ai problemă, și ai miches. Na, tu si tu fiindcă star.
In search of a fresh start, Huko travels to Birmingham, a city where he has some connections that help him rent a new house. Soon after moving in, he gets another visit from the police. The 14-year-old has fled her care home, and officers are trying to track her down.
Sorry, what's happened?
Because we're looking for somebody.
Yeah, but...
Others like to come in to get out of the way.
Yeah, but it's your police. No, he come in there. Speak to me, please. It's possible coming, not coming. It's no good. Coming for looking. Fast to speak, yeah?
The police search the property, but don't find the missing girl.
Who lives here at the moment?
It's my family.
Your family?
Yeah. For why?
Right. As I said, we've got a female, 14-year-old female, who's gone missing.
I'm in denial.
I need to know. No, I'm not saying you've done anything wrong, but this is the address we've been given. No?
The police don't know that Huko's nephew is in a gypsy marriage with the missing girl.
Me no guarantee. No, it's my family. No?
Didn't we live with you?
Yeah, just sleeping. No dad, no mom here. Okay, sleeping.
Have you any idea where she is at the moment?
No, not.
Okay. All right.
Huko maintains he doesn't know where the girl is, and the police leave. It's soon discovered that the girl ran away to meet up with her mother, Nadia, who has recently flown into the UK.
Nu, hai le-am vizita, le manușanța, le barânța, le-am vizita. Hai, lasă, ci de m-a vizita la șurasa, că pende că trebuie te lăr m-am gătesto. Te dicând dacă sem la chide sau na. Hai, și o râle pe naștitar.
But Nadia decided to return her daughter to social services.
Hai, diclăm că pierde bușânga lepa la mende. Hai, me cija n-am saricat care criz lemna, hai demna lângă parpale. Ca să te respecti na helege, s-o mangălpe. Dorir mă foarte bud, oi camela te beșavia te pașala. Dar mi trebuie te beșau pa la linghi condiții.
Nadia believes it is Huko's fault that her daughter was taken into care.
Nu a păsut să ardem în rașora. Dar lu sti și n-avle conactele, tinca l-avle că ia cabri. Hai te avele camera. Ti dicăl terti te abahtalo, terti ma, că mântramani volcanul tașu davle că pomui. Chiar de gătiu să mără viața ca vilem ca te dusi.
So this one as well was a #1 hashtag on the day of the broadcast, and for another 3 days actually it was very widely viewed, and people still remember this film, whoever I talked to about it in the UK. Now the next film clip that we're going to look at is also, we're also staying in the domain of care, of the care system and child welfare services. This one I produced for Stacey Dooley. Not too sure if anybody's familiar with Stacey Dooley's name. Yeah, I can see people nodding in the audience. Stacey Dooley's done, at the point we made this documentary for her, she already had 60 investigative documentaries, right, which she filmed about social injustices, social injustice stories, extremely horrible stories, mostly related to pedophilia all over the world, right? And then her agent approached us and said, we don't have a Roma film for Stacey yet. So what would be your suggestion, Juice? So my suggestion was to look at the overrepresentation of, as officially we are called, Gypsy, Roma, and Traveller children in state care in the UK and in Hungary. The BBC decided to fund the film in Hungary, but not in the UK, unfortunately. But we did make the film in Hungary. Now, we are going to play a film which is not necessarily about Romani language, but it shows the injustices that Roma children are subject to once they get into the care system, which is an unbelievable reality. So I decided to show this clip to you guys, which is also a very short one. You are going to hear my voice over the character being shown in the clip, but he also wanted us to edit out his voice, not only his face, but also his voice, right? So let's watch the clip and see what they say.
I've managed to find a children's home worker who is so angry at what goes on that he's agreed to meet me. He said that he'll agree to have a chat with me, but for obvious reasons he wants to be kept unidentifiable.
Ideges vagyok nagyon. Ha elkezdek most beszélni, akkor az egész életemet tönkretehetik. Egész Magyarországon.
I promise you there is no way that we will show your face. There's no way. The reason I was desperate to meet you was because I met a young lad who'd seen children sexually abusing other children. Do you know if that kind of thing's going on?
Ez mindennapos. Amikor kiderülnek az incidensek, akkor viszont, mivel szemtanú nincs, illetve meg van félemlítve a gyermek, általában veréssel, így nem mernek beszélni. Illetve csak olyan ember ismeri fel, hogy baj történt, aki nagyon szereti a gyerekeket. Én pedig látom a gyerek szemében, hogy mi történt, testén a verés nyomait, a lelkitörést, és nem tudok vele mit kezdeni.
How many of the kids in your care home do you think have been affected by abuse?
250 és 300 fő között. Vagy arra vagy kíváncsi, férfi nevelő, fiúgyermeket molesztál, vagy férfi nevelő kiskorú, fiatalkorú lányokat.
How many of the kids are Roma?
95%-a, illetve 99%-a. Magyarországon vannak olyan hálózatok, gyermekotthonban nevelkedő, szűz lányokat keresnek, roma lányokat 11-12 évesen, elviszik őket, nagyon nagy pénzeket fizetnek azért, hogy a szűz lányokkal háljanak.
Are there workers in your care home that are facilitating these criminals? They're offering them girls.
Olyanra is van példa, de felülről védik.
But you've never found the confidence to alert your superiors.
Egyszer fölvállaltam, maradjunk annyiban, hogy közel 10 évre tönkretettek.
What's the most difficult thing you've had to witness?
Hogy olyan fiúgyerek szemébe nézzek, akit orálisan és análisan szexuálisan bántalmaztak. Senkinek a világon nem kívánom, hogy olyan gyermek szemébe nézzem. Nem tudod földolgozni az életbe. Megpróbálsz elszámolni a lelkeddel, hogy te mindent megtettél. De a rendszer lehetővé teszi, hogy van ilyen még.
Thank you. These Roma children are so unbelievably vulnerable. And the evil that exists here breaks your heart. And these children, you know, they're let down time and time again. These children, some of them are treated like dogs, they are.
So after it was very hard to record this clip with Stacey, not just for Stacey, for the entire crew. We were all crying, and it took us very long to actually record this clip. Romani language is very helpful in bringing viewers close to our reality and making them better understand the intensity of pain that we all go through. It's really incomparable, I have to say. And when people say, why is a gypsy heart so different, right? It is because of the pain that we bear and go through for many, many generations now. And the very last clip is about that as well. But it's going to have a little bit of music in it, and I thought to put that at the end, so we finish with a kind of music, with a bit of music, and then we're going to have roughly 10 minutes left to take your comments and questions that you may have. So this is about Mr. Duna, who is originally from the Czech Republic, and he's very ill. He's disabled. He's got mental health issues and mobility problems, but he's been a musician all his life, right? And he puts all the pain into music. right? He's not a very talkative person. And then his son is in the UK, not just this son, but all the other children have always told us about bullying experiences. Our children have gone through very severe bullying experiences as well in the UK educational system. And Mr. Duna always has to travel back to Czech Republic to get access to medical care, because in the UK he's not getting access, just like the majority of Romani speakers in the United Kingdom. Can we please play the last clip and then kick off the conversation?
Do you want to come and say hi, guys? Nastig da vas. Probacim fala, já não é coronavírus. Tai a cana só avilal pale. Sarina de. Saborom ište?
A hin má akutní problémy dnes. No kampel mange doktory znale navštípit do chudaví.
Zkuši nás, te pomoži nás tuke. Hello, Buzz.
Hello, Mr. Jones. This is Baba Buzz here. Have you ever been bullied at school, Richard?
Yeah. You know, there's like two people in my class that always like bully me and make fun out of my name.
When somebody is bullying you, do not suffer in silence. That means tell somebody. Bullies, no bullies in school, bullies, no bullies in school, no bullies in school. That's the rule.
I like that song.
You like that song?
Yeah.
I'm gonna dedicate that song to you, Richard.
Šajba se menge jak dili.
Devlamiro.
I think today been great. I think people had fun. Yeah, I think they liked the music. My super guest speakers, the special guest speakers we had today online, I think they were absolutely brilliant as well. Kids loved Theresia, they loved Buzz, they loved Richard and Harriet as well. But online is very important for children because they can connect to the world. And now we want to introduce them to some of the successful Roma and non-Roma in the communities that will incentivize them and motivate them to do some practicing at home every day. It is very important for them because they have no connection with anyone really in the community here locally, and that way they would feel part of the local life.
Now the Romani speakers may have noticed that the Romani sound bites that we use were from different dialects, right? And that is the door in really. So when we go and negotiate access, we always use the local dialect to address the Romani speakers. Because if I give them my original dialect, which is the Lovari Keldaras dialect, they will close the doors, right? They will not want to speak to me. But if they perceive me as an insider from within the same caste, then I will get the green light. And then we can go deep. And they will share stories with me in their mother tongue that they would not share about with anybody else, right? So I'm thinking we've gone through the clips now, and before I give it to the audience, I'm just wondering if Christoph would like to make a comment, and then we would receive the comments from the audience as well.
Yeah, maybe just a very short one. That the use of Romani language in the documentary films is very important. It brings the audience closer to the problems, to the Roma culture, to the Roma world, and it is more authentic. And I think we need to have more documentary and fiction films in Romani language because it shows much better the Roma culture and the richness of Romani language as well, I think.
Thank you, Christo. And we're very happy to take some comments or questions from the audience if anybody wants to take the mic. Hannah has the hand up there.
This is just a short comment. I wanted to say both Porocco and Adank, which is Yiddish, for how you guys talked about sort of Jewish and Romani connections before we watched. That was watching you guys speak. I'm sitting here next to Maria, who's lovely. It was one of like the few times where I felt really proud to be mixed. from both, because usually I just feel like I'm not enough of either. And I just wanted to say thank you guys for making me feel like okay, you know, occupying both identities in a way that I usually don't. So thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.
I'm losing my voice, so bear with me. I have maybe two questions and one question and two comments. I think one is just to understand who's the target audience of the clips, and I ask that because I'm just again not questioning the work itself, just try to understand its impact depending on who we want to show it to. And so I'm always a little uncomfortable when such, like how we framed Romani stories and what the objective of the framing is when addressing human rights issues. And just to make it more clear, like why the need to constantly portray, I think, an aspect of victimization when we talk about Romani stories, because I think it sometimes contributes to the perception that already exists that, you know, what Roma live is kind of a little untrue if we compare it to other human rights situations. And I'm just wondering what the target audience is, like where was this diffused, like what the reactions were to some of the clips. And I guess the other comment was more around, again, like about the Romani dialect. So, I mean, I constantly have debates with different Romani speakers about, you know, the dialects and whatnot, but I think that it would be a generalization to say that if we were to knock on a Roma's door and speak a Calderaj dialect, that they would close the door. I don't, in my experience at least, is that there's a seeking in commonality through the language. So when you go in a room and one person speaks Romanes, there's a sense of pride, even though the dialect might differ. So just kind of trying to understand, is that you know, a dynamic you've seen, or it's more perhaps are particular? Because I think there's also a responsibility that comes in saying such things when we have an audience who doesn't maybe know about Roma, and then I think it does contribute to making generalizations that themselves contribute to discrimination. So that was like a rant. I don't know if it was a question or a comment, but I apologize.
We have 3 minutes left, I think. Oh, and there's one more question. Okay, let's just two more. Let's just listen to the comments then.
I'll try to wrap it up really fast. You have to take a historic perspective when you're looking at movement of people across continent, where it's from India or from East Europe to the UK. There's always an underlying story, and the story of survival. Now, in terms of Jewish or Roma or Armenian like me, there always has been conflict in major countries to suppress minorities. And there were purges, regular purges. We don't talk about them here because we don't get much airtime from Russia, but the Russians had regular purges from Lenin, Stalin, and they would go into villages, Roma villages, Jewish villages, because they were living in proximity outside of the etiquette of the so-called authorities. So all these minorities have a lot of sharing in common in survival across generations. And if you go back just 100 years, I had the privilege of knowing my grandmother. The reason why is because my grandmother got married at 12.
Thank you. And Rocky as well.
I'm making an observation based on a research I did during the winter semester. I did a research seminar on the rising nationalism in India. So in that, for example, the present ruling parties of Indian religious cultural nationalism, which has aspect of fascism, and the province Gujarat, Hitler is taught as one of the best administrated till 7th grade. So in my research, I found out that Indian history has gone through a lot of unhealed historical events. For example, there was Muslim invasion, then the British colonization. So the present generation, they want to project as shining, that victimization aspect they want to put down. So there is a trend to rewrite the history as we were winners and we were never victims. So I would like to connect this, whatever the films you have showed and some of the observation made. See, a lot of development has taken place, but health sector, education sector, these people are deprived. But there's a section we call the corporate guys, the majoritarianism. They would like to project a developed country, So I feel like there's a conflict. So I want to draw your attention. This Roman communities, are they beneficiaries of the development, especially health sector, educational sector? And when we are talking about the language of minorities, are we talking about the subalterns who are deprived? They are existing, but they are not the beneficiaries of the globalized culture. I'm just making some observation. Thank you.
Do we have time to reply? We are past. Crystal, do you want to take it first?
Well, first maybe to Dafina's comment about the language. Roma actually are proud when they hear someone speaking Romani. It doesn't matter what is the dialect. They would say, oh, this is not how we speak, but yeah, we are Roma. And they will appreciate and like this, that you are trying to speak, and they love even more when you try to speak their dialect, to show some kind of respect. This is called respect, actually, when you try to speak their dialect. And the story of the position of being a victim, actually, in most East European countries, unfortunately, with the increasing of the neo-Nazi movement nowadays, the Roma are actually victims. And it is not just like someone decided to show the Roma being victims in few documentary films or clips or whatever, but in the reality, thinking about countries like Bulgaria, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Hungary, the attacks over the Roma communities, constantly being discriminated, eliminated, and this all negative attitude in the societies and the racism actually brings to great movement of East European Roma to West Europe, and those things which we saw in the documentaries here or in the clips, actually this kind of things happen also in Germany, in Belgium, in the Netherlands. So there are two reasons for that. First of all, most of the Roma think that going to West European countries, they will start to pick up euros from the trees and or from the grass. The life is so beautiful. Everyone will embrace them, kiss them, hug them. They are not prepared psychologically for the difficulties there. From other side, the white societies, they have their own problems. They have Arabs, they have Indians, they have Africans, they have Turks, they have now Ukrainians on the top of everything. And our gypsy communities, those gypsies disturbing us last 1,000 years, why they left India in general and why they came to Europe to disturb us. These kind of negative attitudes are expressed. I'm trying to find the word which will less show my attitudes. The white societies, the majority societies are not very happy, and they don't kiss and embrace and hug the Roma coming from East Europe to West European countries, because with all the economical difficulties because of the war between Russia and Ukraine, and after the COVID also, all societies have their own problems, economical problems, political problems. Unfortunately, in some West European countries, we see that in Germany, we have the AfD, the neo-Nazi party in the government, in the parliament. We have Le Pen in France. We have Italy, we have Sweden, and so I would say that Roma accept that or do not accept that, like that or do not like that, are victims in all European countries, East Europe and West Europe. And maybe your question was rather like why we show that in the film, that just let me finish, that the majority will get this impression that the Roma are only the victims and there is no anything positive. I think that showing these negative situations with Roma families, with the pregnant 14 years old girl, with the child with the burnt leg, or with the Roma guy who has to go back to Czech Republic to be operated, this is to turn the attention of the society, not to put the bad light on the Roma, but to turn the attention of the society that there are communities who are working, living here, working and trying to have normal life, but the society actually doesn't so much care about them. This is from one side. And from other side, also, although that the positive examples were few, there are children who are dreaming to become teacher, nurse. I would like to become like you, social worker. I would like to be, to speak good English or good German. And they are doing that, In East European countries, there are, in West European countries, there are many young boys and girls now who are going even to universities. They study and they get integrated. But we should show to the societies the negative examples of the things which happen in the Roma communities in order to make better the life of the Roma, not to put this negative light to show only the negative things, but with the expectations that the society should take more care and to develop and to make the life much better. And about the neo-Nazi movement in India, I think Indian society is not isolated from the rest of the world. Unfortunately, the most shocking thing for me was recently when I heard that there is a neo-Nazi movement in Israel. Can you believe that? In Israel, neo-Nazi movement? I was shocked how it's possible. How? Are they crazy? Did they forget what happened 80 years ago? It's absolutely impossible. You cannot even think about this. But unfortunately, there is this kind of phenomenon in societies which never had, Nazism. They never experienced the Nazi life. And I don't know what made the Indians to become fond of neo-Nazi movement and fond of Hitler's ideas and etc. But maybe there should be more documentary films about this, what happened to Roma, Jewish. Together with Roma and Jewish, there were also a lot of Slavic people from Poland, from Ukraine, from Russia. There were witnesses of Jehovah. There were gays. They were people with disabilities. They were killed by the Nazis just because they are like that. Including, there were Germans who were killed by the Nazis because they were married to Jewish women. They were married to Roma women. And they had a grandfather who was Polish or Czech or Slovak or Ukrainian. So there were, they were communists, and they were creating pseudo-scientific criteria in order to be able to kill the people. Bring those Indians to Auschwitz for 2 hours and make them a tour, and then ask them how they feel. And to put themselves on this, on 2nd of August, invite them to come to Auschwitz on 2nd of August when there are thousands and thousands of Roma families coming to, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, actually, if you wanted to attract the attention of people who do not know the situation, do not know much, the situation of the Roma and Roma in UK, I think you succeed with me. Because I was shocked to see how many kids were molested, abused, and also one see that social services do not work very well. Children are not protected enough. And if the Roma are not protected enough, it means that other children are not protected as well. And what I hate in Europe is I find, different institutions separate too much the Roma from the rest of the population, and instead of, I think it's useless to make this separation, and children should be treated all the same way, the Roma and those who are not Roma, and how come all these children have been molested? They are not protected. At school, bullying happens in all our school, but at least there is a system that we have to teach parents and kids. If you are bullied, you have to report it to someone in position of authority at school. If it's difficult, you speak to your parents, and your parents will talk to someone at school. And you don't need to use your wrist, because here you are protected. And you succeed,
Thank you very much, Chantal.
What I would need to like more, and I know we are rushed on time, but it's what this charity movement is all about, because you make this little clip in a certain context, and I would like to know more, actually how, which group you target exactly. Is it for Romani Council or just for people, who do not know anything? That's,
Yeah, unfortunately, Dufunia was not here when we started. She came in only for a very short period of time, and she's not even here now, so she can take the answer from me. But I will try to give you guys the answers, and maybe you can tell her later. So basically, this was for these are documentary films that we saw, right? And for British television, they were made, right? So for the BBC and Channel 4. I would like to give a question to the audience. Has anybody else made a film for the BBC or Channel 4 before? Or any other major platform? Yes. Okay, so you probably also have the experience where you realize at some point that actually you don't have freedom at all in terms of editing, and they will change contrary to all the agreements we made before, even in writing. The main commissioner will change the film radically half an hour before broadcast. And they do that not just once. And I got tired of that, right? Because the films ended up being different and conveying different messages to what I meant. And I decided not to give an opportunity for these big corporations to take advantage of the access which I negotiate to these extremely vulnerable families. Right? Recording these stories and many other stories in these films has been very, very hard. They stick with me for good, right? And they keep causing me mental health issues to date, right? It's very, very hard to face these stories, to film someone dying, right? And getting her story while she's dying. I mean, come on, it's very inhuman to do that to anyone, and you being the interviewee or the producer, it's very, very hard to do that. But I thought, finally in my life, I have an opportunity to reach 10 million viewers, etc., right, on these big platforms. So I thought, yes, we've always been shown as victimized people before. Yes, indeed, I agree with that. I've always been critical about that too. However, these big corporations are interested in meeting the needs of their audience, so the money keeps coming in, right? They are interested in the numbers only, right? And there was this interest by UK broadcasting companies in Romani stories. And I decided to help them and reveal and uncover these stories to the people. And I decided to do that so we can show the human being behind these stories. So if there is a Roma man who is negotiating over a bride price, then let's show the other people around the Roma man. Let's show that girl who is being negotiated upon. Let's show her mother, and let's show her grandmother, right? If you watch these films, you will see the stories unfolding. The voices, to bring out the voices that have never been heard before, right? And these are relatable characters and relatable stories. And the impact is just amazing, because people who were fed on my Big Fat Gypsy Wedding series, right, which created extremely strong stereotypes against us in the UK, I am discriminated against each and every single occasion I move outside my house to date. And not just me, my wife, my children, my dad, my mom, my cousins, and anybody I meet. They have all the same stories, right? And I feel that on my skin, right, each and every single day. I've never experienced it to an extent as it is in the UK. So I decided I stick with my filmmaking, and I'll make films which will show them that this is the people that you guys are looking down on, right? This is how vulnerable we are, right? And that's what you are doing to us, right? And you know what's happening? The reactions from people are just amazing. They say things like, they cry, right? And they say things like, oh my God, I've never thought, this is unimaginable what you guys been going through. But nobody ever spoke about this. These are the reactions. How would we know when this is not on display, right? Nobody knows what happens to your people. Nobody talks about it. In the UK, according to YouGov, which is like the Central Statistical Office in the UK, YouGov measures the least liked communities, right? And they make a list of the least liked communities. Who do you think leads this list for 10 years? Us, the Roma people. We are the least liked community in the UK for 10 years in a row. And there is no education about us at all. The second least liked, who do you think the second least liked are? We're talking about the UK. Muslims, of course, right? 25% below us. So the study says that people are more scared of their bikes getting nicked from their backyard than a bomb being thrown on them. These are all stereotypical things I'm telling you now, right? But this is what the survey results show. And there is no education whatsoever. So if I get an opportunity to make a film and reach 10 million people, or actually 80 million people in the UK, right, then I will make that film, and I will do my best to show them the human beings and the hearts that are getting broken with these stories, so people can relate to it. And these families' life were in the movies, in the films you saw. Next day, after the broadcast, when they go to the doctor, when they go to the council, people will be like, you come forward, you come and sit down here. I will help you. I will make sure that this is not going to happen to you again, right? This is my country, and the UK is not like this, right? This is the impact, right? And I'm thinking, our people their voices need to be heard, right? And it's the average voices. Because, you know, if you show me on TV, right, oh, Jews with lots of university degrees, he's been all over the world, he advised 2 past presidents of the World Bank, and et cetera, who cares, man? You know, I'm not gonna change their stereotypes just by showing myself or people similar to me or highly educated and et cetera. The anti-Gypsy perceptions will stick with them, right? They will not change. But this is exactly what these films do. We are breaking the anti-Gypsy perceptions. We are showing polarity in the community, right? We are showing our customary law that nobody is familiar with. We don't ever talk about our laws to outsiders, never ever. And go and find a book anywhere about the Gypsy laws. You won't find too many, so it's just a few mentions, right? And this is what we are trying to do in the films as well, to make sure everybody understands who we are and they can better respect us and try to avoid discriminating us going forward. And maybe just the last note, another reason to do these films is to show the intensity of pain that we Romani speakers all go through because of the lack of content in any institution about us. And if there is a content, it will be misinformation about us. And these films give a chance to show people the suffering that we all go through and we still survive, right? Even though there is no institutional representation of our real nature and of our real stories. Thank you very much, everyone. If you're interested in watching these films, I'm very happy to share links with you. Some of them cannot be viewed online anymore, but I've got them on my personal drive. If you reach out to me, send me a message privately, I will be very happy to share the links with you. And also, The Deathless Woman can be watched on Vimeo for $6 Canadian. But I'm very happy to share a link and a password with you, again, if you message me privately, and I will send that across to you so you can watch it and send me feedback after that. With The Deathless Woman, the reactions are just, oh my God, breaking stereotypes, right? People after the broadcast, anywhere we went on the tour, were crying, and I'm telling you, everyone was crying, and people standing up and saying, I never realized that I am anti-Gypsy. I never realized that I've been brought up with these until I met you guys and until I saw your film. And thank you so much. And old people saying that as well, right? Thank you so much, thanking us and hugging us very tight for changing their perceptions about us, right? This is what we are trying to do, and we won't stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you again to our wonderful speakers. I believe the Institute is going to carry on with activities tomorrow and in through the weekend, but for those of you who will be joining us back in Fourth Space, we'll see you on Monday. Thanks for a good conversation, and we'll catch you at the next one.